I am Clifford Alderman, 67 years old, and for the past 3 months I have been pretending to be a fool. Last Saturday night, I hosted a dinner to celebrate what would have been my 50th wedding anniversary with my late wife, Vivienne, 1880 guests, a ballroom at the Grand Lakeview in Columbus, and my son Nolan sitting 4 seats away from me, carefully stirring something into my bourbon while he thought no one was looking. He smiled at me across the table, that same easy, confident smile I had watched him wear his whole life. I smiled back. What he did not know was that I had been watching him for 3 months. What he did not know was that the glass he just poisoned was not the one I was going to drink. Before I tell you what happened when his brother-in-law took that drink instead, drop your city in the comments and hit subscribe, because underestimating an old man is one of the most expensive mistakes a person can make. The ballroom was beautiful. Crystal light fixtures, white roses on every table, a string quartet in the corner playing the same waltz Vivienne and I had danced to at our wedding in 1975. I had put real money into this night, and I hated every second of it. Not because of the cost. After selling Alderman lumber and supply for $2 million last spring, money was not the problem. I hated it because this party was not a celebration. It was a trap. I stood at the head table and looked out at the crowd, old suppliers, former employees, a couple of city inspectors I had worked alongside for decades. Good people. The kind of people who showed up at Vivienne's funeral and stood in the rain without complaining. And then there was my family table. Before I go further, I need to tell you about Vivienne, not the whole story, just one moment. About 6 months before she got sick, we were sitting on the back porch after dinner. It was late summer, warm enough to stay outside past dark. She had a glass of iced tea, and she was watching the yard go quiet. Out of nowhere, she said, "Cliff, when I'm gone, don't you let this family fall apart." I told her she was talking nonsense. She just looked at me the way she always did when she knew something I didn't yet. "Promise me," she said. I promised her. I thought about that promise a lot over the following 3 months. Some promises cost more than others. Back to the ballroom. My daughter Carolyn was sitting next to her husband Spencer Radford. She looked tired, the way she always looked these days. Spencer was an estate planning attorney. Quiet, watchful, always calculating something behind those steady eyes. He had one hand resting on the table, and he was scanning the room with the patience of a man who had already decided how the night was going to end. And then there was Nolan, my son, 41 years old, good-looking, quick with a joke. He told people he was a financial planner. He wore a watch that cost more than my first truck. He was holding court at the table, laughing, charming every person within 10 feet. Looking at him that night, I thought about the kid who used to ride with me on Saturday mornings to open the yard. He would have been 9 or 10. He liked to work the radio and argue about what station to play. I always let him win. That kid and the man sitting at my family table were not the same person. I had taken me a long time to accept that. I tapped the microphone. The room went quiet. "Thank you all for being here," I said. "I know Vivienne is watching tonight, probably telling me I spent too much on the flowers." A few laughs moved through the crowd. 50 years since that stubborn, beautiful woman agreed to marry a guy with sawdust on his boots and a pickup held together with hope. She believed in me when nobody else did. She built this life with me, board by board. I paused. I looked at Nolan. He raised his glass to me. His smile was perfect. His eyes were somewhere else entirely. I raised my glass to the room, to Vivienne. The echo came back warm and full. I watched Nolan drink, set his glass down, and then let his eyes drift to the glass in front of me. The one he had prepared, he was waiting. I excused myself from the head table and moved through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting condolences, dressed up as congratulations. But I kept Nolan in the corner of my eye the whole time. He was relaxed now, settled back in his chair, confident the hard part was done. When I made my way back to the family table, I came from the far side, approaching from behind. I leaned down close to Nolan's ear and spoke quietly. "Son, can I borrow you for a minute? There's something about your mother I want to show you, out in the hall." He stood up immediately. He always did when I mentioned Vivienne. That was the moment. While Nolan walked ahead of me toward the hallway, Garrison Holloway, my attorney of 20 years who had been standing nearby with a drink in his hand like any other guest, stepped to the table and made the switch. 2 seconds clean. Nobody noticed a 63-year-old man adjusting a glass on a crowded table. Nolan's brother-in-law, Spencer Radford, the man who had been quietly drafting guardianship papers for the past 2 months, picked up the wrong glass and took a long drink. I steered Nolan back inside a minute later, told him I had just wanted to say how much his mother had loved him. He looked a little uncomfortable. Good. I sat back down. The glass in front of me now was clean and untouched. I raised it to my lips and pretended to drink. Across the table, Nolan watched me, waiting for a stumble. Slurred words, any sign at all. I gave him nothing. Then Spencer made a strange sound. It started as a cough, then his hand went to his throat. His face, which had been flushed from the wine, drained completely white. He grabbed the edge of the table and sent glasses and silverware crashing to the floor. Carolyn screamed his name. Spencer tried to stand, but his legs gave out and he went down hard, his body shaking in long, violent spasms. The ballroom erupted. Someone near the back shouted to call 911. A waiter dropped a full tray. People rushed forward and formed a ring around Spencer, and I could hear Carolyn crying somewhere inside that ring, calling his name over and over. I did not move. I sat in my chair with my hands flat on the table and I watched. Then I looked at Nolan. He was not looking at Spencer, he was staring at me. His face had gone the color of old concrete. His hands were shaking against the tablecloth. And in his eyes I saw something I had never seen there before in 41 years. Fear, not the ordinary kind. The kind that comes when a man realizes the ground under him is not solid anymore. I held his gaze for a moment. Then I looked away, calm as a man watching weather roll in from a distance. The paramedics arrived in 8 minutes. They worked on Spencer right there on the ballroom floor, stabilized him, and loaded him onto a stretcher. Hotel security moved the guests out in groups. The white roses got trampled, the string quartet packed up in silence. By 10 o'clock, the beautiful room was empty except for staff and police tape near the family table. I rode to the hospital with Garrison behind the wheel. It worked, I said quietly. Garrison nodded. He did not say anything else. There was nothing to celebrate. We had just watched a man go down on a ballroom floor. The fact that he had been working to destroy me did not make the image easy to sit with. The ER at Riverside was all fluorescent lights and disinfectant and the steady beeping of machines. Nolan was pacing the waiting area when I arrived. Carolyn was in a plastic chair with her face buried in her hands, still in her dinner dress, her shoulders shaking. I sat down next to her and put my hand on her back. She looked up at me. Her mascara had run and her eyes were red and swollen. She looked like the little girl who used to fall asleep on the couch waiting for me to come home from the yard. "Dad," she whispered, "what happened to him? He was fine, and then he just—" "I know," I said. "I know, sweetheart." Nolan stopped pacing and looked at me. His voice was tight and controlled. "You were right there at the table. Did you see anything? Did you see anyone near his drink?" I rubbed the back of my neck and shook my head slowly. "Nolan, I'm an old man. I had a long night. I don't notice much these days." He stared at me for a long moment. I could see him working through it, going back over every detail, trying to find the place where the plan had come apart. He had put the drug in my glass. He had watched me at that table, so why was I standing here sharp and steady while his brother-in-law was in a trauma bay down the hall? The answer was standing 10 feet away, pretending to read a pamphlet about flu season. I patted Nolan on the arm. "Get some rest, son. You look like you've seen a ghost." A doctor came out about 40 minutes later, young woman, tired eyes, clipboard. Spencer was stable, stomach pumped, blood work back. She said the word flunitrazepam, and I watched Carolyn's face go blank trying to place it. The doctor said the other name, Ruhypnol, date rape drug. In the concentration found in Spencer's blood, it could cause seizures, severe disorientation, complete memory loss. She said she was required by law to report it to police. This was not an accident. This was deliberate poisoning. Carolyn covered her mouth with both hands. Nolan said all the right things. Shock, full cooperation. Whatever the detectives need, we are here. His voice was steady. His hands were not. 2 detectives arrived within the hour. They interviewed each of us separately in a small consultation room off the main waiting area. When it was my turn, I sat down across from Detective Hartwell and rubbed my eyes like a man who had been awake too long. She asked what I had observed at the party. I sighed. "Not much, I'm afraid. My memory isn't what it used to be. I was greeting guests, making small talk. Spencer was at the table when I got back. A few minutes later, he collapsed. She asked if I had seen anyone near his drink. I shook my head. "I'm sorry, detective. I just don't remember." She studied me for a long moment without speaking. Then she wrote something on her notepad and thanked me for my time. In the hallway outside, Nolan was waiting. He stepped close. His voice dropped low enough that only I could hear it. "You were sitting right there, old man. You saw something. I know you did." I looked at him steadily. "Son, I told the detective everything I know." He held my eyes for a long moment, then he stepped back. Something behind his face was shifting, rearranging itself, getting ready for the next move. I had seen that look before. I had been watching it for 3 months. I said goodnight and walked to where Garrison was parked at the curb. Neither of us spoke on the drive to the hotel. I sat in the dark of my room until past 2 in the morning, looking out at the city lights and thinking about a kid on a Saturday morning fighting over the radio, and how long a road it was from there to here. Let me tell you how I got here, because none of this started at the ballroom. It started 9 months ago, right after the sale of Alderman Lumber and Supply closed. 38 years. That company was built from a single flatbed truck and a line of credit I had no business qualifying for. Vivienne kept the books for the first 6 years at the kitchen table after the kids went to bed. By the time I sold it, we had 4 locations, 61 employees, and contracts with 3 of the largest commercial builders in Central Ohio. The buyer was a national supply chain group out of Atlanta. They paid $4.2 million, and I signed the papers on a Tuesday morning and drove home and sat in the driveway for about 20 minutes before I went inside. I was ready to be done. Vivienne had been gone 18 months, and without her, the work felt hollow. I wanted to rest, see more of Carolyn, maybe travel a little, do the things we had always said we would do once there was time. Then Nolan started calling. First it was casual. Dad, you should think about what you're doing with the money. A savings account is not a strategy. You need someone managing that portfolio actively. I thanked him and changed the subject. The following week, Carolyn called, her voice careful and rehearsed. She said she and Nolan were worried about me managing all that money on my own at my age. She said Nolan really knew what he was doing and maybe I should let him help. I told her I would think about it. Instead, I called Garrison. I had known Garrison Holloway for 20 years. He handled the legal side of the business, wrote my contracts, kept me out of trouble more than once. He was not the kind of man who got excited or alarmed. He just listened, asked 2 or 3 precise questions, and then got to work. 3 weeks later, he came to my house with a folder. Nolan held a financial planner license. That part was real, but he had not had a legitimate client in over 2 years. What he had been doing instead was running a small Ponzi scheme, collecting money from new investors to pay returns to old ones. The whole structure was maybe 6 months from collapse. On top of that, he owed $380,000, gambling debts, and personal loans from people who were not patient by nature. Some of those people had been calling his cell phone every day for the past month. Garrison set another document on the table. Nolan had opened a trust account in my name, my information, but I had never signed a single page of it. It was already set up to receive transfers. There is more, Garrison said. He slid a third document across. Spencer Radford had been drafting emergency guardianship paperwork. The legal framework was already built. If a licensed physician certified that I was mentally incompetent, Spencer could file the petition on a Monday morning and have control of my accounts by Tuesday afternoon. Full legal authority over my finances, my medical decisions, everything. I sat back in my chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment. And, Carolyn, I asked. Garrison was quiet for a second. I don't believe she knows the full picture. Spencer has been careful about what he tells her. She thinks this is about protecting you. I thought about that for a while. Carolyn had always trusted the people she loved. It was one of the best things about her, and it had made her easy to use. What do we do? I asked. We let them think it is working, Garrison said, and then we document everything. So that is what I did. For 3 months, I played the part. I started repeating myself in conversations. I left my reading glasses in the refrigerator and made sure Nolan heard about it. I let him catch me staring at bank statements with a blank expression, like the numbers had stopped making sense. When he suggested again that I let him manage the accounts, I told him I was starting to think maybe he was right. I watched his shoulders drop with relief. 2 months in, Garrison's investigator picked up a phone call between Nolan and Spencer. Nolan's voice was low and certain. He said the anniversary party was the right moment. I would be emotional and off balance. He would put something in my drink during the toast. By the end of the night, everyone in that room would have watched me fall apart in public. Spencer said he had the emergency guardianship petition ready to file first thing Monday morning. Once the petition was filed and a cooperating physician signed the certification, they would have access to the accounts within 48 hours. Garrison stopped the recording and looked at me. I asked who the physician was. He pulled out a printout, a man named Martin Coles. His medical license had been revoked 5 years earlier for falsifying patient records. He had been working off the books since then, available for the kind of consultations that legitimate doctors would not touch. I looked at the documents spread across my kitchen table. The fake trust account, the guardianship petition already written out with my name at the top. The recorded call, the photograph of Martin Coles meeting Nolan at a diner on the east side. We have enough to go to the police right now, Garrison said. I shook my head. Not yet. I want him to try it. I want him to believe he has one. And then I want him in a room where there is no way out. Garrison studied me for a moment. Then he nodded and started making calls. The party was my idea. A grand memorial dinner, 180 guests, the perfect stage. I spent real money on it, and I meant every dollar. It was not just a trap. It was also a tribute to Vivienne, who deserved better than a quiet evening and a sad anniversary. She had loved a room full of people. She had loved music and flowers and the feeling of an occasion. If this was going to be the night everything came apart, it was going to be a night worth remembering. I just had to get through it first. 3 days after the party, Nolan called. His voice was measured, careful. He said everyone was shaken up about Spencer. He said Carolyn was struggling and the whole family was worried about me. He said he had arranged a small family meeting, just the people who cared most, at Spencer's office downtown. He had also asked a doctor to be present, a specialist in geriatric psychiatry who could help assess how I was doing given everything that had happened lately. I let a long pause go by. Then I said that sounded like a good idea. I told him I had been feeling confused and that maybe talking to a professional would help. I let my voice waver just enough. I could hear the relief in the half-second before he answered. "We will be there at 7, he said. "Just come as you are, Dad. We only want to help." I hung up and called Garrison immediately. He said his team had been ready for 2 days. Cameras were set up inside Spencer's office building. Detective Hartwell had a warrant and was standing by with her partner. Garrison would be in position before I arrived. I put on a plain shirt and drove myself downtown. I walked into Spencer's office at 7 minutes past 7, moving slowly, looking around the reception area like a man trying to remember where he was supposed to be. Nolan met me at the door and guided me by the elbow into the main conference room. Carolyn was already seated, her hands folded tight in her lap. Spencer sat at the head of the table, still pale from the hospital but composed. Next to him was a man I did not recognize at first glance. Silver hair, bow tie, the practiced calm of someone who had done this kind of meeting many times before. Nolan introduced him as Dr. Richard Hartley, a specialist brought in by the family. His real name was Martin Coles. Garrison had confirmed it that morning. Martin Coles extended his hand and told me the family was very concerned and had asked him to have a simple conversation to see how I was getting along. I shook his hand and looked around the room with wide, uncertain eyes. "I don't understand," I said quietly. "Carolyn, what is happening?" "Who is this man?" Carolyn started to cry. She told me it was okay. She said everyone was there because they loved me and wanted to make sure I was safe. Nolan guided me to a chair at the table like I was made of glass. He told me to sit down and that everything was going to be fine. Cole sat across from me and spoke in a smooth, rehearsed voice about the concerns the family had shared with him. Confusion, memory lapses. Difficulty managing complex financial affairs. He said denial was often the first sign of a deeper problem, and that the people in this room only wanted to get me the care I needed. Then Spencer opened a folder on the table and slid it toward me. Power of attorney, guardianship consent forms, an admission application for a private psychiatric facility in northern Ohio. "We just need your signature on a few pages," Spencer said. "Once this is in place, Nolan and I can take the stress of managing your finances completely off your plate. You will not have to worry about any of it." I looked at the papers. I looked at Nolan. I looked at Carolyn, who was still crying softly and watching me with eyes full of a guilt she did not yet fully understand. Then I looked back at Nolan and spoke in a voice that had not wavered once in 38 years of running a business. "Nolan, this is your mother's money too. Are you sure about this?" His jaw tightened just slightly. "Mom is gone, Dad. This is family money. You just need to sign. It is the right thing for everyone." "The right thing," I repeated. I nodded slowly. I set my hands flat on the table. And then I raised my head and spoke clearly. "Garrison, did you get all of that?" The side door of the conference room opened. Garrison walked in holding a tablet with a lit screen. Behind him came a man with a professional video camera, the red recording light on and steady. Behind the cameraman came Detective Hartwell and her partner, both in plain clothes, both with their badges out. Nolan shot to his feet. His chair scraped hard against the floor. "What is this? What is going on? This?" Garrison said calmly, "is a recording of you and your associate attempting to fraudulently commit a mentally competent adult to a psychiatric facility. It is also a recording of a conspiracy to obtain his assets through falsified legal documents and a fraudulent medical evaluation." Nolan turned to me. For one full second, there was nothing on his face but raw disbelief. Not anger, not calculation, just the look of a man who cannot locate the moment where everything stopped going his way. "Dad," he said. His voice had lost all its steadiness. "You cannot do this." I looked at my son and I did not look away. "You did this," I said. "I just made sure there were witnesses." Detective Hartwell stepped forward and identified herself. She told Nolan he was under arrest for conspiracy to commit elder abuse, fraud, and assault with a controlled substance. Her partner moved toward Martin Coles. Nolan did not resist. He stood there while Hartwell put the handcuffs on, his eyes fixed on the floor, and he looked smaller than I had ever seen him look in his life. Then Carolyn found her voice. She pushed back from the table and grabbed Nolan's arm. She told him to say something, to tell them it was a mistake, to tell them he had not done any of this. He turned his head away from her. His voice came out cold and flat. "If you had just gotten him to hand over the accounts 3 months ago like I asked you to, none of this would be happening." Carolyn let go of his arm and took one step back. She looked at her brother like she was seeing someone she had never met before. Garrison walked to the TV mounted on the conference room wall and connected his tablet. The screen came to life. Security footage from Spencer's home office recorded 3 weeks earlier. Spencer on the phone, relaxed, laughing. He said Carolyn had no idea what was actually being planned. He said once the money transferred, he would give her a settlement and leave the country. He said she would be fine. The footage ended. The room was completely silent. Carolyn stood in the middle of that silence with her arms at her sides and her face very still. And I watched my daughter understand all at once exactly what her life had actually been for the past several years. I walked over to my daughter and put my arm around her shoulders. She did not move at first. She just stood there staring at the blank screen. Then something gave way inside her, and she turned into me and held on. And I held her back while the detectives finished their work around us. They took Nolan and Martin Coles out through the lobby. Spencer was still recovering at Riverside and would be formally arrested the following morning when he was discharged. Garrison packed up his equipment quietly and gave me a nod on his way out. By 9 o'clock, it was just Carolyn and me in that conference room, sitting side by side at the table where her husband had laid out the papers he wanted me to sign. We sat there for a long time without saying much. She asked me how long I had known. I told her about 9 months from the first time Garrison came to my house with the folder. She asked why I had not told her sooner. I said I was not certain how much she knew. I said I needed to be sure before I said anything that could not be unsaid. She nodded slowly. She was not angry. She was just exhausted in the way people get when they have been carrying something heavy for a long time without realizing it. Around midnight, a nurse called from Riverside. Spencer had asked to see Carolyn. She looked at me and I told her she did not have to go if she was not ready. She said she needed to hear it from him directly. I drove her to the hospital and waited in the lobby while she went in. She was in there for about 25 minutes. When she came back out, she was dry-eyed and very quiet. She did not tell me what he said and I did not ask. On the drive home, she looked out the passenger window for a long time. Then she said, "I knew something was wrong. Not about the money, not about any of the specifics. But I knew something was wrong and I told myself I was imagining it. I kept my eyes on the road." "That is how it works," I said. "They count on you talking yourself out of what you already know." She moved back into her old room for a while after that. We did not talk much at first. The house was quiet in a different way than it had been since Vivienne died. Not the quiet of absence, but the quiet of two people figuring out what came next. Slowly things shifted. Carolyn started picking up her design clients again. She went back to running in the mornings. Real laughs started replacing the careful, measured ones she had been giving for years. The trials came 6 months later. Nolan received 10 years for conspiracy to commit elder abuse, fraud, and assault with a controlled substance. Spencer received 7 years for conspiracy and guardianship fraud. Martin Coles took a plea deal, 3 years in exchange for full testimony against both men. I was in the courtroom for every verdict. I watched Nolan's face when the foreman said guilty. He looked at me as the officers moved him toward the door. I did not look away and I did not look satisfied. There was no satisfaction in it. That was my son. I had taught him to drive in the parking lot of the original yard on Morse Road. I had watched him graduate. I had kept a photo of him in my wallet for 41 years. None of that disappears just because a man turns out to be someone other than who you raised him to be. It just becomes a different kind of weight. What I felt was closer to done after 9 months of watching and waiting and holding the whole thing together alone. It was simply done. Garrison and I started talking about what to do with the money about a month after the verdicts. $4.2 million sitting in accounts felt different than it used to. Not tainted exactly, but heavy. Like it was waiting to be pointed at something that mattered. We incorporated the Alderman Foundation the following spring, legal defense, private investigation services, and a hotline for elderly people who believed they were being targeted by family members or people close to them. The calls started coming in almost immediately. A man in Indiana whose son had been forging his signature on transfer documents. A woman in Kentucky whose caregiver had been slowly draining her checking account for 18 months. A retired couple in Michigan whose nephew had already taken $140,000 and was back asking for more. We helped them all. Carolyn joined the foundation 4 months after it opened. She started by answering phones and ended up running victim services. She is good at it in a way that took me a while to understand. She knows how these situations feel from the inside. She knows how a person can love someone and still miss what that someone is doing to them. She sits with families and tells them her own story and shows them that there is a way through. Last week, a young man named Fletcher came into my office. He was maybe 27, nervous, holding a folder against his chest. He said his grandfather was being taken advantage of by someone the family had trusted for years. He said the family lawyer told them there was nothing to be done. He said he had heard about the foundation and did not know where else to go. I looked at this young man who had driven across town on a weekday afternoon because he loved his grandfather enough to fight for him. I thought about Nolan. I thought about Carolyn. I thought about Vivienne on the back porch telling me not to let this family fall apart. I told Fletcher to sit down and tell me everything. He sat. He talked. I listened. When he finished, I picked up the phone and called Garrison. New case. Get the team together. I hung up and looked at Fletcher. I told him we were going to help his grandfather. That was a promise. He started to cry. I shook my head. Do not thank me yet. Thank me when he is safe. I watched him walk out and I thought about what Nolan had said to me in that conference room. You just need to sign. You cannot do this. I smiled. He thought gray hair meant a slowing mind. He thought grief made a man easy. He thought patience was the same thing as surrender. My name is Clifford Alderman. I'm 67 years old. I run a foundation that helps people like me. And every single day I wake up grateful for the life I still have. If someone is doing this to you or someone you love, reach out. Drop a comment, send a message, tell me your story. You do not have to handle it alone and you do not have to figure it out from scratch. That is what we are here for. The wolves are always watching, but so are we.